Good afternoon. During Hack Them All 2020, we were pleased to notice that there was an enormous demand and interest for our summer course. That is why, this year, we decided to expand the summer course in order to meet the demand and offer better content than ever before. We launched the world's leading online 5G conference, backed by 5G, and invited the industry experts, entrepreneurs, and policymakers together to discuss, present, and question how 5G will affect our society, economy, and everyday life. Our first speaker has over a 20-year-long career at the World Bank, latest as a Director of Human Development in the African region. Nowadays, she is a professor at Aalto University and a special advisor on education to Commissioner Urpilainen at the European Union. Today, she is here to give us a keynote about the global learning crisis, which she has done extensive research on.
Good afternoon, good evening to all participants. My name is Ritva Reinikka. I'm Professor of Practice at Aalto University School of Business, and I'm an economist by profession in the economics department in Aalto. And in this presentation, I will pose a challenge to all of us about education. And this challenge is often labeled the global learning crisis. It is not just a challenge for IT or connectivity or 5G, it's a challenge actually for everybody. But very important to understand the big picture situation where also connectivity sits. Access to schooling has massively expanded during the last few decades. Almost all world's children start schooling today, and this has never been the case before in the whole world. It's really a reason for celebration. This has happened during many of us, surely mine, lifetime. But unfortunately, schooling ain't learning. While I pose this challenge, as I already hinted, in the context of IT connectivity here today, it is a challenge for the whole society, for educators, politicians, parents, companies, countries. Technology will not alone be able to solve this challenge, but we must still ask, what could technology do for its part? Most of my presentation highlights the global learning crisis, shares with you what it is, especially what we have learned about its symptoms, how it has been diagnosed, and also something on the therapeutics. So first, what is the learning crisis? What are its symptoms? Here is rural India. Nearly 3/4 of students in grade 3 could not solve this two-digit subtraction problem, 46 minus 17. Grade 5, half could not solve it, despite the fact that they were in their 5th grade of going to school. But this is not a problem just in poorer countries, lower income countries like in India. Brazil is an upper middle income country, and it participates in PISA, which tests 15-year-olds mostly in OECD countries, compares learning outcomes between countries. In Brazil, there has been progress over the 2000s in math, for instance, tested in PISA. But if that speed of progress continued, it would take 75 years for Brazilian 15-year-olds to reach the OECD average. In reading, which is also tested in PISA, it would take more than 260 years. So clearly, it is not the speed of reform, speed of change in learning is not good enough right now. I will also show a little bit of global picture, a global perspective of the symptoms of the learning crisis. And this is percent of end of primary students who meet a minimum proficiency threshold for learning in math. There is no global measurement of learning so that we would have it for every country like we have a gross national product or gross domestic product. But there is the World Bank World Development Report team put together close to 100 countries using TIMSS, which is the Trends in International Mathematics and Science Study, and some other sources to be able to compare. These blue countries here, they are high-income countries, and they all their school leavers, primary students, master the minimum proficiency level. The countries here, 99% in Japan, for instance. But then when we pull out the rest of the countries, you will see that there are also high-income countries where primary students do not master the basic skills, and some are very low. Some of the low ones are in the Gulf countries, for instance, some also in Latin America, where countries are high-income. The green area is upper middle income countries. On average, 61% of primary students pass the low bar, but you see huge variation. The top performers are many former Soviet republics where education has always performed quite well, and especially math, which is measured here. Lower middle income countries are the red ones. Also great variation, 37% is the average. So only 37% meet the minimum math proficiency when they leave school. And low-income countries, the average is 14%. So this gives you the idea of the extent of the problem globally. One more kind of symptom or diagnosis perhaps is the learning profile, which is derived from demographic and health surveys, which are done across, they are meant for something else than learning, but they also test women, young women, 25-34 aged, who can read all of a single sentence in their chosen language. It's useful for this purpose as well, even if otherwise it looks at health and reproductive health and so forth, those surveys. However, what we see from these learning profiles, where on the x-axis you have highest grade completed, and then the percentage on the y-axis, and you see huge variation, even in African countries. So Africa is not a country. Africa is really 54 very different countries. And in terms of learning profiles, you see Rwanda. When a young woman has completed 6 years of schooling, 100% pretty much can read a full sentence. But in Nigeria, the most populous country in Africa, only 12% can. So when you think of when there's a lot of talk about girls schooling, yes, it's very important, but it's equally, if not more important, that the girls learn at school. So in Nigeria, after 6 years in school, only 12% can read a full sentence. That also highlights the learning crisis. COVID-19, the pandemic, and school closures have exacerbated the learning crisis globally and in Africa. We all know that from our own experiences during the 1.5 past years. And just some survey evidence that is now available, 80% of children surveyed said they were learning little or nothing at all. And this is from the Save the Children surveys that are being done, Africa and elsewhere. 80% of children surveyed reported facing an obstacle to learning, like there was no one to help them. And in West and Central Africa, 42%, almost half of the children did not have access to learning materials. COVID has also exacerbated and is exacerbating both the learning crisis and the digital divide. 85% of respondents in Africa anticipated the current crisis will lead to more widespread use of technology in education. I think that really the pandemic jolted the world towards digitalization also in education. But also almost as many, 3/4, thought that a move to more online learning will increase inequality in education and disadvantage poorer students. And obviously, you need electricity, you need broadband, you need equipment, you need teachers who know how to use these devices. So it can be expected for sure. But EdTech is a term that is used in education technology, and knowing what works in EdTech predates COVID. It actually has been an issue for a while. On the one hand, there is hype. It's driven by hype of new technology often, or innovations or pilots that can be so small that they make no dent whatsoever to that systemic issue that I was discussing in terms of the global learning crisis. And sometimes these EdTech hypes are also accompanied by political and financial interests. Similarly, research that is available shows a mixed picture on the effectiveness of these EdTech interventions. Just some summaries. These come from something called EdTech Hub. I'll show you their website at the very end of the presentation. It focuses really this hub. It's a consortium of many partners, operates from the UK, and they really bring research and synthesize research on EdTech. What they conclude so far is that there really isn't evidence about what is the most or least effective, what works and what doesn't. That evidence really is not there. There's also not that much research available, and if there is, it's hard to find, hard to access, and hard to use overall. And then it's understandable that it's hard to make good policy decisions and hard to be designing effective interventions. Like I remember in Kenya, new administration brought every kid should have an iPad. But then when you analyze what change did that make, it probably wasn't a very cost-effective intervention. How to make these interventions to bring about systemic changes and also be really effective and cost-effective. And as in many other areas, stakeholders are disconnected from research. I myself operate often in the space of research and policy making, and it is really a very disconnected two communities, and sometimes from one another as well. I just wanted to finish by showing this nice map of internet access, how it looks like across the world. So internet obviously requires electricity. I'm not talking about electricity here, just the internet access. And more than 75% of the population with no internet access is the deepest red color. And the next deepest shade is 50 to 75%. We can see that the populous continents, Africa, definitely there. So it's very good you focus on Africa also in this course. And then the Indian subcontinent super populous area of the world. So those are the deepest colors to remind us that these are the areas where the learning crisis is the toughest nut to crack, and also internet access is not yet there. To conclude, I just wanted to highlight here in the last slide, the EdTech Hub is there, and it's a public good. It's an international public good. All their work is available free for anybody on their very good website. Same applies to RISE, which is research on improving systems of education. So it's a decidedly a research program that focuses on the learning crisis and systems of education, not just individual interventions or pilots, on the contrary. And then there is also World Bank source of the learning crisis is the 2018 World Development Report, Learning to Realize Education's Promise. So this is the challenge I want to pose to you when you work on your connectivity and the new great innovations and bringing them to people. Do keep in mind the learning crisis and what this agenda could contribute to its solutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your keynote, Ritva. Nokia is a global telecommunications company from Finland, with whom, backed by 5G Conference and Hack Them All course, have also been developed. For example, 5G Mökki is a product and a service developed by Hack Them All 2019 winning team, and 5G Mökki can also be found from the Nokia headquarters in Espoo. You can read more about 5G Mökki at startnorth.com. Our next speaker, Ari Kynäslahti, is Vice President, CTO, and Head of Strategy and Technology of Mobile Networks at Nokia. We are happy to have you here and eager to hear your thoughts on the topic.
Hello, my name is Ari Kynäslahti. I'm heading the Nokia Mobile Networks Strategy and Technology. And today we are talking about how technology can improve productivity in developed and developing countries. So the opportunities. Data usage keeps on growing, also in developing countries. And actually, if we look at the comparison on the left-hand side, looking at the data growth, traffic growth in North America from 2019 to 2025, we can see 5 times traffic growth. Africa, 9 times. So we are catching up comparing the developed and developing countries as a trend. Another one is the affordability challenge. So still in some areas we can find regions in the world where data simply costs too much. You end up basically spending 20% or even more of your income to get the reasonable 1 gigabyte data connection. So we need to improve on that one where technologies like 5G are helping. Then there is the competition. If we pick up as an example from India, when the new player, new CSP, new operator entered the market with full force, Reliance Jio in 2016, after 2 years they had completely transferred the market. So basically the industry size in terms of the traffic grew 2.5 times. So challenges started from scratch and grew at the same level where the competition was with the data traffic. Many of my friends and colleagues from India actually ended up having 2 phones. So the regular phone, the old phone they used for voice, and the new one from Reliance Jio for data. That's how big impact the competition, new competition, made in the market. Ever since the established operators in India have also come down with their pricing for data and improved their data networks. The challenge we have is to make sure that we have the inclusivity for the digital future. So if we look at the COVID-19 and think about the school children, so 1/3 of them, roughly 500 million, really didn't have a good connection for the remote schools. And if we look at the whole world, pretty much the whole world was somehow limited or forced to go to remote learning. And then if we look at some areas in the world, like pretty much Africa, we still have 4G coverage issues, so we need to improve the networks. And then still in many places, like in Africa and Latin America, we can see the issues with the affordability of the mobile data. Here again, 5G will help with the cost of connectivity and multiplying the capacity of the 4G networks. So what needs to change? What's the solution? So the first one coming from the technology side. So we need to introduce the 5G quite often together with the fixed wireless access. And then even for 5G, we need to look for something from the future, like high altitude platform services, bringing the connection from the satellites. We need development programs and budgets, prioritizing the digitalization from the several organizations. And then we need to look at the government and enterprise-led digital transformation, which is already ongoing with the 4G, but will speed up with 5G. So let's look at what we have done together with Safaricom in Kenya. So Nokia and Safaricom launched the 5G commercial network services March this year, 2021. And with this network, together with the Nokia 5G Fast Mile CPE equipment, we are able to introduce connectivity to homes, schools, enterprises, enabling superior customer experience, accelerating the data growth, and growing the business with enterprises. Key technology to cover the non-connected part of the world is to work with the satellites. So 3GPP Release 17 includes the non-terrestrial networks solution. Good thing with the solution is that it relies on the regular devices, so regular handheld devices work. Also the fixed wireless access, the regular ones work, and also the regular 5G base station and core network work. So the magic happens in between. In between you have the ground stations and the satellites on the low Earth orbiting roughly 700 kilometers away from the Earth based solution where also we are creating overlaps with the satellite beams, so we are able to do handovers between the beams from the satellite. And with this solution already the first ways we are looking at the AST Space Mobile plans. They are actually going to go with the first phase of the plan already in 2023, and with that one providing coverage to 1.6 billion people, starting basically from the equator area, where a lot of the coverage is still missing. Of course, with this kind of technology, we will also completely build the coverage to the oceans and the mountains and the very remote places all over the world. Development programs to connect the unconnected for the digital education and community engagement. So again in Kenya, Nokia together with UNICEF, we have a program to connect the schools. So basically bringing in digital education, teacher training, internet connectivity and communication to the schools. 10 schools connected, more to come. Whole initiative has reached more than 90,000 children in Kenya so far. Another example for development programs is Smartpur initiative from India. So with smart poors or smart allocation, we have 5 pillars: health, education, governance, financial inclusion, livelihoods. So the idea here is to digitalize the village ecosystem, also for the education, but also for business. So we are building these smart cities, smart villages, deploying the connectivity. And over the past 3 years, the project has expanded to 100 villages across 7 states of India. Target is to develop this to 500 smart villages. Government and enterprise-led digital transformation is a big thing. If we are looking actually the mobile market, this is the growth segment. This is the only growth segment really. The growth is 35% annually. Very important part of Nokia, big part of our business, and especially for the future, this is big part of our growth. We today have more than 260 customers on the private wireless networks enterprise side. Typically we go to these customers through the operators, through the CSPs directly as well. Out of these 260, 40 are already having a 5G network. If we look at the use cases a bit, so the typical ones we can find on energy, so you are optimizing the energy electricity grid. Mining, you are making the vehicles run without a driver. Transportation, so you are basically replacing the old networks of GSM-R and Tetra. You are creating a network for the employees of the airport or railways. Ports, everything automated. Manufacturing, getting rid of the cords, really making the kind of modern factory flexible as possible. And then the public safety, again, replacing those old Tetra networks with the 5G. Huge growth opportunity for the industry. One example from the COVID days again, with Nokia and Vodafone working together with Lufthansa. So in this example, we built 2 separate networks for Lufthansa to use in Hamburg. And with these networks, with the fantastic 5G speeds, customer was able to use video link for their maintenance work, showing how the testing is going with the new engine parts. Their customers then didn't need to leave their workshops, but they were able to simply over the video see how the maintenance is actually ongoing. Another example from our own world, so Nokia factory in Oulu, we have been able to improve the productivity by 30% with the latest technology like 5G. We are also building something completely new, I would say industry leading, for the testing of the equipment. So the new technology, massive MIMO, is a new kind of testing environment needed, and for that one we have created a lot of over-the-air testing in the bigger rooms and also in the smaller sea containers. So at Nokia we are committed to connecting the unconnected. The Broadband Commission target of 2025, getting the other half connected, Nokia is very much committed. 5G technology, other technological advances help strengthen the education, business and employment, and with that, the productivity. Thank you.
Thank you for your time, Ari. By the way, did you know that Finland is globally the #1 in terms of used mobile data per person in a day? Our following speaker comes from Microsoft. Microsoft is one of the largest and best-known technology companies in the world with iconic software familiar to all. Microsoft Azure is one of the leading flexible cloud service platforms with the more business-oriented viewpoint. First, we see a video about an example on how Microsoft is supporting sustainability initiatives and projects with IoT and cloud technology. After that, we have Victor Bahl on stage. Victor Bahl is CTO and Technical Fellow at Azure for Operations at Microsoft. Stage is yours, Victor.
My world in 15 years would be water is clean, rainforests are vast, animals are safe from poaching. Poaching is a thing in the past.
Project 15 really is a passion project devoted to supporting sustainability initiatives with IoT and cloud technology. And there is so much need for our skill set to come over and help. We got the first email from Bastian.
With some easy partners, our purpose is really to achieve zero poaching in our lifetime. We have camera traps, acoustic sensors, drones, motion sensors, etc. They all generate data. It became clear pretty quickly that there wasn't this centralized solution that sits in the middle that pulls in all the data, makes it usable. That's where we needed help. I came across the Project 15 website and Sarah responded within a day.
We knew that we had something because, quite honestly, he wasn't the only one who called.
The GEF Small Grants Program, implemented by United Nations Development Program, supports local communities on innovative solutions related to environmental issues, such as climate change, biodiversity, land degradation, and chemicals and waste. We're really excited to be working with Project 15 from Microsoft, who have very similar missions.
When we started drawing all these solutions, it turned out their problems were the same as commercial problems. How do I get to scale?
So for example, for jaguar conservation, we have been collecting lots of data from the local communities on where the jaguars are and where the human-wildlife conflict is happening. But putting those data one by one in Excel sheet and analyzing them has been really difficult. So what we really need is a scalable solution.
So we would create tools in a toolbox. It's really an opportunity to operationalize, and Daisuke and I met with scientists, but they don't have time to learn how to do the whole solution.
I started designing and building the tools. How do I make this tool available and easy for people to pick it up? After speaking to the scientific community, I quickly realized, they know what kind of music they want to play, but doesn't mean they want to know how to build a piano. And I'm good at building a piano. So I made a tool.
They actually had the capability and the resources to build what was needed to take conservation technology to the next level. Over 2020, Microsoft ended up developing this IoT conservation solution that's now on GitHub, available to the entire conservation community.
It was much easier to design a piece of software and say, here, push this button, and off you go. Kate reached out to me over Instagram, and she pitched us.
I'd like to take a moment and tell you about my journey.
And said, I want to make a club where we break the timeline. Because if you wait for me to get old enough, we won't have any animals left.
Sarah and Daisuke are going to partner with me. They're going to teach me IoT and how to use the Project 15 open platform.
We have this fifth industrial revolution going on. We have all of these technologies that can massively increase scalability.
And we have made IoT solution easier for our community to use.
Not only on conservation of species, but in sustainable cities, agriculture, and many other emerging environmental issues.
And once you see that sustainability solutions are actually a good business model, we just need to connect.
I'm confident if kids are given the tools and the opportunity to learn, my generation can become part of the solution.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you very much for allowing me this opportunity to talk to you today. My name is Victor Bahl. I am a technical fellow in Microsoft. I'm also the CTO of Office for Operators, a newly formed business in Microsoft. Before joining this product team, I used to work in Microsoft Research for about 24 years. The question in front of us is, how can technology help the developing countries prosper? And more importantly, how can technology help take on the biggest challenge, one of the biggest challenges in the world, which is to educate everybody? Let me begin by talking a little bit about my own journey. In 2003, the Microsoft CTO, Craig Mundy, introduced the idea of digital information divide to me. In a nutshell, the idea is that some folks like me have information available at their fingertips, while there are many others who do not even know where to look for this information. This gap leads to economic gaps, and that's obviously not very good. Now, the reason for digital information divide is that companies do not find that they can make money in areas where there are not large densities of people, or it's an impoverished place. And what is more important is it's not about even making money. They can't even sustain the business. So now the question is, how can we reduce the expenditure that they have to incur in order to make this available? So I then started working on that. So between 2003 to 2012, I worked on various wireless technologies that made internet broadband available in areas where it was previously not available. So I started with what was called mesh wireless networking. The idea there was that communities who did not have internet access would buy Wi-Fi or laptops or computers, which were not that expensive, and then they would bring them to their home, and through a multi-hop network where packets would flow from one to another third, they would find a place where the internet existed, and from there they could go into and out of the internet. So instead of bringing the internet to everybody's home, you would bring it in one place, and then everybody would share it through this multi-hop network. This was a good idea. It was successful. Lots of places in the world in villages started to implement mesh networking. Now, even as we were doing this, we realized that one of the way to reduce the cost was to work with unlicensed frequencies. Now, most of the cellular networks that you're aware of worked on licensed frequencies, and licensed frequencies are expensive to buy, and then it is expensive to then deploy these networks. So in unlicensed frequencies, we found that in the United States, the TV access was changing from analog to digital. And that was allowing or opening up new frequency bands on which people could operate. So we then worked on technologies to show how wireless capability that was available to a particular user could be used by a secondary user when that particular primary user was not using it. This was called opportunistic networking. Another manifestation was white space networking. We were able to convince the regulators in the United States and all over the world that this sort of technology was possible, and so that they should open it up for unlicensed use. And they did. And then many people around the world, especially in Africa, really took advantage of that, where they started to see internet being deployed through much less expenses. Now, in the US, Microsoft started a program called Airband. You can look it up in any of your search engines, Bing. If you type in Airband, you will see hits to it, and you will see how Airband has promised to bring 2 million users in the United States broadband internet access. And that's sort of a combination of white space networking. Now, one of the interesting things about all this stuff was that while this technology was good in reducing the expenses for delivering, it did not solve the other problem, which is that what happens if something goes wrong? This has to be sustained by companies, by people who can keep going at it. So we needed a business model for it. Now, these days, I'm actually working in helping the telecommunication company and the cloud companies, which is Microsoft, come together to use the common infrastructure that they both use. So the idea being that Azure provides the ability to the telecommunication providers to both do everything in software and move the packets just like Azure moves its packets on its own networks. Now, software implemented on commodity servers can reduce the cost of these 5G equipment, which is no longer, you don't need specialized hardware for it. And the idea is that once you do it in software, you can now create not only the reduction in capex and opex, which is the operating expenses for these networks, but also provide an ability for the developer community to come in and write lots of new applications on this new infrastructure, thus providing a growth opportunity for these telecommunication industries. So now you have this ability to create sustained business models that I was talking about. Now, the nice thing about 5G is that it's got a low latency, high bandwidth network. This low latency, high bandwidth network allows you to fundamentally support video. And video allows you to be connected to teachers all over the world. So if you're in a classroom, you can have access to the resources of some of the best teachers in the world, and they can collaborate with people on the ground to create an environment, a student's environment that can be very, very beneficial to all of us. Now think about the last 16 to 18 months. A lot of us have been working in the home. I'm talking to you from my home right now. And it's been a very sort of a sad journey in some sense because we have lost a lot of people, but it's also been a journey where we've started to realize how much dependent we are on technology and how technology can help. So, for example, I've been, it's not just me, it's students all over the United States have been taking courses from home. Online learning has become a big thing. And while this is far from ideal, we have learned to take advantage of that, and we have improved ourselves quite a bit for this. So, for example, Microsoft's Teams, which allows teachers to create virtual classrooms. Teachers can teach their subjects to the students, and then the students can talk to one another virtually, face to face. Activities can be generated. People can come together in this space, and they don't have to be available to it. And Microsoft Teams has done a tremendous job in making that available to everybody. Office 365 is another product which has allowed people to come together and share documents, look at each other's PowerPoints, and all the other amazing stuff that goes with it. Now, as CTO in Azure, I constantly think about how to get rid of the digital divide, how to create more connectivity for people, how to make them, empower them with all kinds of advantages that the technology brings to them. And so in thinking about bringing all this stuff together, it makes sense for us to create these networks that can both exist by themselves or are very easy to manage and create these opportunities. So what I want to say today is that I'm actually really excited that you're all coming together to talk about these ideas and these new topics, and to use your intellectual horsepower to solve some of these important problems. We know how to build very secure networks, and we are happy to try to work with you to build those networks, but you have to take advantage of them, and you have to bring to us the kinds of things you want to be able to do with them. And together, maybe we'll make a big impact in this space. So once again, thank you very much for inviting me to talk to you, and hopefully this will go amazingly well. Goodbye.
Thank you very much for Victor of your thoughts on the topic. Our next speaker, Thierry Barbé, works as head of unit at Department for International Partnerships in European Commission. Barbé is a doctor of medicine, and he has also worked extensively on supporting healthcare in developing countries. Nowadays, he's heading a unit at the DG International Partnerships. We are happy to welcome Thierry on stage.
Dear audience, thank you for providing the European Commission with the opportunity to present its approach to technology to improve productivity in partner countries. I do represent the Director General International Partnerships dealing with cooperation in Sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America and Caribbean, and Asia and Pacific, under the strategic guidance of the Commissioner Jutta Urpilainen. Maybe I should start by reformulating the question in a way that's relevant for the EU and for developing countries. For a public institution, the challenge is always somewhat different. For a foreign public institution, even more so. The question I propose is therefore the following. Why and how a foreign, public institution like the EU should be involved in technology-induced improved productivity in developing countries? I would like first to highlight 4 basic elements relevant to the question. 1. Together with the European External Action Service and the rest of the European Commission Directorate Generals, even the most domestically oriented one, the EU intends to play a geopolitical role. It will do that by protecting its own interest, political, economic, strategic ones, but also by promoting its vision of an open, democratic, rights and rule-based society. 2. At the same time, the EU plays a leading role on partnering for the development of partner countries. Along the joint commitment on the strategic development goals, this is a historical role. It is still very much at the heart of EU external interventions. 3. More and more these geopolitical and development roles are played together with EU member states in a common or a joint framework for policies and intervention. We call it a Team Europe approach. 4. The von der Leyen Commission has 2 key priorities, both as domestic and at international levels: the digital transformation and the Green Deal. This was established even before the COVID crisis, underline the vital importance of the digital transformation. To be fair, the international aspect of the digital transformation is rather new for international partnership. Before I enter into the EU approach, let me figure out another handful of additional consideration that will help you understand the role the EC intends to play. 1. Working with public institutions always raised the issue of productivity of the public institution itself. In our case, ours and the one from the partner countries. Developing partnerships on the governance of the various technology fields, as well as mobilizing technologies for an improved governance, are the baseline of all EU interventions with partner countries. 2. New technologies keep creating new technological divides. Ever-expanding new technologies are creating ever-expanding technological divides. This is a relentless challenge for the development DNA of the EU, as we are entitled by nature to contribute to bridging the divides. 3. Technology required to foster productivity in low-income countries are not necessarily very sophisticated, nor particularly new. Tremendous efforts are put into the spreading of simple existing technologies. 4. On the other hand, no government can afford not to keep track and pace with the new technological developments, as they are clearly growth and innovation factors. We stand ready to help innovation ecosystems develop outside the few exemplary cities around the low and middle income countries. Among the many technological options available, the EU chooses to prioritize digitalization. No surprise for that. The potentials are huge. The demand is almost infinite. The appetite for digital transformation is huge. It has become one of the most common shared goals. Some see access to digitalization either as a basic need or even as a public good. The digital technology used for productivity cannot be mobilized without developing structural elements that build up the digital ecosystems. In this regard, internal and external EU strategic orientations are basically aligned. This approach is detailed in the latest EU strategic document, the Communication on the Digital Compass. 1. Support is given to digital governance, including policy and regulatory frameworks in line with EU values and standards. It is provided by default along all other digitalization interventions. It is also provided by enhancing cybersecurity. 2. The EU will facilitate investment to connect underserved populations, regions, or countries to bridge the digital divide. 3. Nations want to rely on digitally empowered and capable workers, citizens, including women and youth. The EU will support government with expertise and projects to bring school and education institutions from basic education, VET, to higher education, to the e-education digital age. 4. The EU will equally invest in promoting entrepreneurship and innovation into the digital economy, with particular attention to digital transformation of SMEs. 5. The EU will strengthen and accelerate e-service, both public and private. We call this mainstreaming. Let me give you a couple of examples like governance, digital financial services, economic identification, public service delivery, for instance, in education, health, and social protection. Let us now take two fields as example on how the EU could mobilize digital technologies to improve productivity. The first is on the promotion of the digital innovation hubs worldwide. The second is on the development of digital skills. Digital innovation hubs are European Union initiative fostering the digital transformation of SMEs and promoting digital entrepreneurship. Bridging the investment gaps for digital transformation in partner countries requires considerable financial efforts, both from the public and the private sector. This will be achieved by channeling large cooperation packages supported by a structured policy dialogue. This will also be achieved by leveraging on the strategic partnership with EU financial institutions such as the European investment banks and all other European development finance institutions, and on financing of private investors. It is essential to work with member states to leverage on their grant contribution in what I already called a Team Europe approach. Opportunities offered by bridging will be key. Bridging is about existing EU innovation hubs and nascent ones in third countries. Bridging between startups, SMEs from different environments. To foster productivity, the EU will foster investment in digital technologies in the Green Deal, such as smart agriculture, smart energy, smart mobility, Earth observation. Environmental monitoring will be based on the potential of digital innovation. Second examples, digital skills. Digital skills and literacy are becoming central element in capacity building with partner countries. This is to be promoted in partnership with EU and non-EU private sectors, EU member states and like-minded partners. The framework is the one of the technological and vocational training and education. It will be essential to reinforce collective resilience, create jobs for youth, reduce the gender gap and improve productivity. More broadly, developing citizen-based digital skills and cyber hygiene is also a serious option to contribute to the resilience of a society and to improve national competitiveness. None of the above-mentioned interventions will deliver on their goals if, within the education system, interventions promoting the use of digital technologies in teaching and learning are not developed. It is first about increasing teachers' digital capacity, the heart of an efficient digital education reform. Governments from Sub-Saharan Africa and Latin America and Caribbean are supported with expertise and projects to bring schools and education institutions to the digital age. Support interventions that are the enablers are vital here, particularly increase access to affordable connectivity, network infrastructures, and suitable equipment. Let us say, to be fair, that in low and middle income countries, all this is still in its infancy. Donor-driven programs are still limited in scope, unfortunately. Now I would like to conclude by saying that the appetite for digital technology is constantly curbed in many places by structural limitation, skills, affordable connectivity, effective business-friendly environment, venture and equity financing, to name the few. Across sub-Saharan Africa, working primarily, if not only, where the market goes, will not make the trick. Yes, digitalization is essentially in the hands of private actors that are market-driven. So the new current frontier is to attract the operators, the digital operators in countries outside South Africa, Kenya and Nigeria, and to some extent outside Ghana and Rwanda. Thank you very much.
Thank you a lot, Thierry, and thank you all for participating today. If you have some thoughts you would like to share, we would be happy to hear them via Twitter with the hashtag #BackedBy5G. Now we open the floor for questions to our experts, so please feel free to write them into the chat. Now we would like to wish you all good evening and see you tomorrow at 1 p.m. EEST/GMT+3.